Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 16th meeting of the Urban Village Development Commission. We're shy a few commissioners tonight due to work and other responsibilities, but we have a quorum, so we're in good shape. We have a lot to cover tonight. I want to go ahead and open the meeting now at 7:03 p.m. A few of us were talking about the meeting minutes from July 2nd, and I'd actually like to postpone the approval of those minutes until the next meeting, because I'd like the other commissioners to weigh in, but both Nina and I feel like there are probably a few things that are missing based on the conversation we had regarding how important the overall record is. And so we're going to postpone that to the next meeting. Okay? So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and move into the Swedish Development Agreement, and we just picked up 3 minutes, so 2 minutes.
Good evening. So just, I don't need that. So these are the things that you've already been handed. I just wanted to, as part of our kind of discussion tonight, give you a sort of sense of what property we're talking about. This is a draft map. We'll have a final one, but for many of you, you'll recognize that the hospital is down in this area, and their existing parking field is in this area. And the land that they're looking at purchasing is what staff fondly call the donut hole. And that's about 10 acres, and the property they already have is about 17 acres, so it'll be just over 28 acres total. So that's the first piece that I gave you. And the second piece is we've actually renumbered. It's not, the information on here is not significantly different than the one you got last time and that I mailed to you. It's just cleaned up because we've actually renamed the appendices, so now they actually have letters. So, and this is really your opportunity, having looked at that information, to ask questions or, you know, let us know if you have thoughts. We will, I think later this week you'll be receiving a bunch of the appendices. We want to get them out to you ahead of time because there's a lot to look at. Many of the appendices you will receive in legislative format, like parking and landscaping, and ones that are basically either Raleigh or Lakeside appendix, you'll receive it legislatively so you can see where changes have taken place. Other ones like the goals or utilities, which are fairly new, you will just get a clean copy.
I know I think you've answered this question, but please remind me. Does this development agreement replace, does the other one end? What's the
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Nina. So this is kind of like what happened with the YWCA and Z-Home. They were pulled out. The existing Issaquah Highlands Development Agreement continues for all other properties, but they were pulled out and had a separate agreement written for them for other reasons. So, as I think I mentioned last time, Swedish is interested in purchasing this land. They don't feel that they can build out by the time the Issaquah Highlands Development Agreement would end, which is 2017. And we feel that there has been a lot of really important good work that we've done on Raleigh and Lakeside that updates this to current thinking, current standards. And so this was an opportunity to give them a more realistic window in which to build out their campus, and us an opportunity to bring the agreement up to date for their properties.
So for them, and for this piece of property, the original Issaquah Highlands Development Agreement, and it's those amendments that applied, will no longer apply to this piece.
I mean, I would guess that many, and if there's something...
Some of it's going to be transferred, but...
Right, like the allowable development that's in this agreement is being taken from Issaquah Highlands. So, you know, there are ways, the traditional townscape neighborhood type is being incorporated into the guidelines. So there are things, the Issaquah Highlands Architectural Review Committee will continue to review the projects. So there are a lot of ways in which the two are still intertied, but for the reasons I mentioned, a separate agreement's being written.
So I have a
Or
couple-
it's not being written, it's being compiled, is probably a better word.
So a couple of questions. One is process that you can actually answer at the end of my question if you don't mind. But the first question around process is how much of this will we be reviewing, and when? And then the other part is, or the other questions are, will there be allowable residential development in this area?
So, no.
No. Okay.
I mean, we offered it because we think that there could be some opportunities, but Swedish doesn't feel that's within their skill set, their interests, their need. You know, Devco is going to be building across the street. There's, a lot of, there's West Highlands Park. There's a lot of residential in the immediate area, and they felt that that would serve the needs of staff and people who wanted to be very close to the hospital without them having to take on a part of business that they just aren't familiar with.
Okay. So where's Devco building across the street?
So if we go back to the map, they're building on this piece of property right
okay.
here.
Across from the other, okay. And then the other question is, have we, I think, based on the Rowley stuff, and Lakeside for that matter, have we solved the issue of, many years of non-development, but making sure that that piece of land is properly taken care of and not just sitting there like the Microsoft land?
That'll be a good thing to discuss. I appreciate knowing that. Right now, the way it is written, there is a certain window for them to develop. It's not, I think it's 14 or 17 years, something like that. And the development agreement would expire then, but.
Right, but I think, I can't remember which it was. Do you recall this, which development agreement we worked on where we said, look, if it's going to sit there for more than, was it Lakeside? Yeah, more than a period of time, then you have to, I don't know if it was landscape it or consider a parking lot or some other.
There are
temporary parking or
requirements
something.
in several of the agreements, you're right, and this would have carried over from Lakeside and Raleigh, is that requirement that things be landscaped after a period of time to avoid invasives and stabilize the site. But it's not like making it into a park.
Right, and that's fine.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're addressing it and not letting it sit there like all the Microsoft land with no recourse at all. So.
Okay.
Okay, cool. And in terms of process then, how much of this will we go through and when?
So I think you're going to get virtually all the chapters. I mean, there's nothing that we've said that's not going to the commission. I think they're like utilities is very technical. I don't know that there's really anything for you to comment on. But I think you're getting everything. A lot of the agreement is, for instance, the guidelines are Raleigh guidelines with a few updates from Lakeside and residential pulled out. So we've done it legislatively again, so you can see that, how much has been changed from the work you did before. Mm-hmm. Because we feel that that was really excellent work. Parking, signs, landscape, guidelines, lighting, mm-hmm. circulation, processing. Those are almost exactly what you've done before. So that's why we're showing it to you legislatively, so that you can see where changes have been made and if you have comments on that. But we don't see those. This is different. That's why I use the word compile, mm-hmm. because in a lot of ways this is, it seems to us, and that's part of why I know why we're having this conversation, that it's the newer ones that are not being brought forward from previous development agreements where we've spent a lot of time going through them. Right. Not that there aren't things to consider. It's really the newer chapters that we're expecting to spend most of our time on. That's great, and I appreciate that, and I don't think we need to hash through everything again, but I just want to make sure that, especially for the new commissioners, and then for another look at it, because it has been a year and a half or whatever, that we at least address and not sort of forget where we were on those other ones. So that's great. Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
you have anything else on this?
No, that was,
That's
it
for
was
now?
just
Okay.
really, that's helpful to hear the kinds of things that you're interested in.
Okay.
Alex Gross from Swedish is in the audience taking notes. And so he and I will go away and confer with our colleagues just to give them an update of the things you're interested in. And we'll be talking about this in August.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, let's move on. So that we're doing something a little bit different tonight. We're going to be doing the public hearing for the preliminary plat, PP 13-00002. And what we normally do in 2 meetings, we're going to do in 1 meeting. So we may have a short recess in between the 2 sections so that staff and the applicant can prepare a response if necessary. We will have public comment available, and I would like to request that we leave that public comment open throughout so that if after rebuttals, that if public wants to come up and speak again, they have the opportunity to do so. So at this time, I'd like to invite Jason up to talk to us about this preliminary plat. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jason Rogers with the Development Services Department. It's my first time here, so I'm pleased to be in front of you finally. This is the preliminary plat for Vista Park Block 10A in Issaquah Highlands, PP 13-40 This site, it's the little one in black. It's actually a very small site right there. It is across the street from the parking deck for the theater, just to the west of Block 11A, east of Z Home. You can see some of the other developments around it, the rest of Vista Park to the north, Lakeside further north, Park and Ride to the west. I'm sorry?
Jason, can I actually just ask you to speak up a little bit, please? Or
I'll bend down a little.
Or yeah.
Constant problem for me.
Okay, thank you.
Where was I? Oh, so anyway, so you can see where it's located in relation to the rest of the Issaquah Highlands here. This is what the site looks like. There's an aerial photo taken just last fall in the upper right corner, and then some quick views kind of to the looking onto the site to the northeast and then to the northwest, and then looking at the picture in the lower right, number 4, is a picture kind of looking at the gateway into Vista Park, if you will, with Block 11A, which was built, of course, 6 or 7 years ago on the right, and the vacant Block 10A on the left. This is the proposed lot layout and access. So it's about 0.41 acres, give or take, so a very small site. This would be 12 lots proposed for townhome development. There are no tracks proposed here. There would be one on-site easement, which is in the southeast corner. It's the bigger of the stars down there, which would be just a small, very small recreation area. On the far west side, which is the smaller star, that's actually an easement on the Z Home property. That's a little access alleyway, which would cut from, excuse me, from High Street through to Ninth Place. Oops. That access easement would have a couple special conditions associated with it. So, just walk through some of the, I know this is a little different presentation than I'm used to, but walk through some of the non-standard conditions here. First of all, because this would be townhome development, would be to bank the water meters and provide an appropriate easement for them. So related to that easement I just mentioned, next adjacent to Z Home, any portion of the building on lot 1, which is the westernmost lot, which overhangs into the utility easement, because there is an easement which would allow that overhang there, would have to be a minimum of 12 feet between the ground level and the bottom of any element that extends into the easement, so it would be a 12-foot height clearance. And then the foundation, the westernmost foundation for that building would have to be at least 5 feet deep.
Can I make a suggestion here on
Yes.
both 12 and 14 to add lot 1 to the description there of the condition? If that's in fact the only lot that it refers to. Thanks.
Let's see, these two conditions both concern the little corner recreation area. The corner plaza amenity must be complete prior to the certificate of occupancy of lot 12 of the plat. Lot 12 is the easternmost lot. This would be reviewed with the building permit. And an access easement to the city must be provided for the corner plaza. And then I have just a few summary notes. Some quick background. This is part of the Lakeside North expansion area. It was originally platted in 2005 and then short platted shortly after to create blocks 10A and 11A. As I kind of alluded to before, they were intended, 10A and 11A were intended to be developed together in 2006. That didn't happen, and only 11A was developed into the Brighton on High East condominiums. To kind of speed up the process, the Development Services Department did approve an administrative site development permit back in January for Block 10A, which is to allow the applicant to move to a building permit more quickly while the plat is still under review. Let's see. For parking, this is, as with all developments, they would provide, or all single-family developments, they would provide 2 on-site parking spaces, which are required. They would provide 2 spaces in the garage and 2 on driveways, with the exception of Lot 12, which due to the configuration of the building on the site, which is somewhat visible here on this, the driveway would be too short for that. There are approximately 11 on-street parking spaces, on High Street and on 10th Avenue immediately adjacent. So there's actually quite a bit of parking here. Density is well within the range allowed here. An important thing to note is that this site is, other than the actual building site, all the streets are in place, the sidewalks are in place, utilities are all there, so there's actually no site improvements to be constructed.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
We're the funnest commission in the world. Funnest isn't even a word. All right, a couple of quick questions. As I read through this, I was just wondering why Lot 12 the plaza is on Lot 12 as a part of Lot 12 and not a separate tract, and what does that mean for the resident or owner of that townhome?
Excuse me. There is a requirement for recreation space on this, within this and any plat. In this case, the recreation requirement is so small as to, it's so small that it would almost not make sense to put in a separate tract and have it be split off. It's just easier to provide an easement.
Well, and I think we could also let the applicant speak to that, because they may have a reason why they wanted to set it up that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just to confirm on the parking, so we're talking about, except for Lot 12, minimum of 18 feet on that driveway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Questions? Other questions before the applicant provides
I
their
just wanted
statement?
the parking to be explained again. Sorry, the extra parking, where's that at?
The 11 spaces?
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are on High Street
Yeah.
and 10th. I would argue that 10th is not available parking because it's completely full every day today with the current residents.
Right.
There is parking on High Street directly in front of this. Probably half the spaces. I would say there's probably 3 to 4 spaces available at any
Parallel
given
parking.
time. Yeah, parallel parking. I wouldn't say 11 is available. But then again, there's two per unit here, so I'm not personally concerned about that, but Chantal.
So actually, I was along the line of what you were just asking, Jeff. I see it's called Tract 8, the alleyway that goes from the movie theater up. Is it okay? Tract B. It will now be in between 2 pretty big walls. On the one side, it's the Z homes, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And Z homes come pretty close to a lot line, and that's coming with exactly to the lot line. So I'm wondering why not use some of the landscaping on that side to give that alleyway, which is kind of I know I walk through it a lot, but I would assume that with the theater, it is a pretty well used.
Sure.
Walkway.
I'll let the applicant speak to why they elected to do it this way.
Is Tract B actually, is that an alley or is that?
It's a pedestrian walkway, and as I said, it's
Okay.
it's actually on the Z Home site and not on
Right,
this
okay.
site. So it's,
But if you cross the street, it gets you into
To the entrance of the- yeah,
alleyway of
yeah, that's right.
of the movie
Yeah.
theaters.
Why don't we, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Just one last
Yeah.
question real quick. If I can understand the parking better on, so you have the garage and then you have a driveway. And so are these homes overhanging the driveway or, and what's the depth of the driveways?
So I want to make one point, because we are switching gears from a site development permit to a plat. So many of your questions are more site development permit oriented, because the plat is really just about creating lots. Now, the challenge is that we're showing you things with the buildings on them, and I think it's good feedback for the applicant, but what we are predominantly doing is just creating lots. So it's different than last time.
Right, and the unfortunate thing is we don't get to choose whether or not we're looking at a plat or a site development permit. So I welcome those questions because I'd like to get them answered, because if it's not satisfactory, we may or may not have recourse, but at least we make our points known. But let's wait until the applicant provide, unless, oh, we have a couple other questions. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
So, Lucy, with that last statement, appreciated. I would like to call out, and just general call out, as well as perhaps an opportunity for understanding that passageway on High Street, if you will, east to west, is very narrow from the perspective of parking along that area. My question being, you have 2 lanes of eastbound travel on High Street. Is there any potential or possible consideration that lanes may shift over a little bit for accommodation?
The city is actually looking at restriping 10th in between Highlands Drive and 10th Avenue, and then 10th Avenue between High Street and Park Drive. So basically between the movie theater parking deck and Cafe Ladro, and then between the parking deck and movie theater and Z Home and the Y, because the striping has always been a problem. And so, and this project benefits from that happening similar time.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nina.
I wanted to know more about how the approval of an ASDP preceding this may limit our ability to make changes or corrections or any kind of judgments on this now that it already has an ASDP that's approved. And remind me why we do it in the other order usually.
No.
So,
oh, go ahead.
so there are sometimes, what you're probably thinking about, and it is true that often with platting, there is an ASDP that follows for, say, open space areas. So if you think about like Forest Ridge that Polygon did, there was a ASDP that followed for the park spaces to actually work through those, because we just see very conceptual plans. This is, so an ASDP before platting is unusual, but it is allowed, and it allows an applicant to get to building permit sooner. And then platting follows. And part of the reason why we were more comfortable with doing that is that this is such a tiny piece of property that is so constrained. If we were setting all the roadways and a lot of the things that we are normally looking at with plats, that, you know, they're larger and they should be in front of the commission for that kind of discussion. This, you know, at the applicant's preference, they want these to be fee simple lots. This could have been a condominium project as an ASDP and never platted. But that was a preference of theirs to have fee simple lots.
Yep. Yep, go ahead.
Good. Well, actually, that answers the part B of that question, because the lot size is so small, and you told me why we have it. Okay. And the next one is about the public notice period on page, no page number, 3rd page in. There's a typo in there that the public hearing is scheduled for July 18th, and my concern is that my little research, which may not be correct, is that you need 10 days for the public notice, and if the public notice was served on July 8th, then we haven't had enough notice, and so I just needed to bring that up before somebody brought it up later and made it even more difficult. Do you see where I'm talking about under public notice? Application was distributed on July 8th,
Yes.
and the public hearing is scheduled for July 18th, which is day after tomorrow.
Yes, you're correct.
So is that the wrong date, or is it just a typo?
There's definitely a typo where the public hearing is scheduled for today, the 16th, and not
Yep.
the 18th, but that's the only typo there.
So if the notice was distributed on the 8th, then we haven't had enough time technically, and
Technically, you're correct.
yeah. So it'd be nice if there were a way to make a correction or some kind of accommodation, whatever was necessary, so that it doesn't further down the road create a more significant process problem, because somebody said, hey, way back there was this problem that wasn't corrected. So I bring it to yours and the applicant's attention.
Okay. There's just a typo in here, too, that I'll share with you
Okay.
afterwards. I don't need to bring up for the group. Okay, thank you. Let's, if you're finished, Jason, for the moment, let's bring the applicant up to talk to us about this, and then we can ask further questions. Yes? Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to hide it out of the way for you.
No, you actually put up the two slides that we had saw before.
Which ones do you want here?
That one worked too.
Okay.
Good evening, Commission. This is my name is Glenn Sprague with Core Design. It's been a month or so since I've seen you guys. Jason did a pretty good job of bringing this up to speed. You then proceeded to pepper quite a few questions that didn't get answers in a row. So I'll attempt to try to address those questions, and please jump in if I skipped one or two in the process of doing that. I believe I'm going to start by saying that this project is an attempt, or originally it was approved already under a different developer. Brighton on High East was on this side, and Noland Homes had both sides intended to be condominiums. He built one half, we never got to the second half, and then the economy hit, and away it went. So the applicant, Ichijo, then purchases this and really intends to mirror what was, and to copy what was already intended to be built, with very little changes. It's the only basic change in this case is we're not doing a condominium. On the right-hand side on Brighton on High East is a condominium project. This is intended to be fee simple. The applicant's doing that merely because of the market. It's not going to sustain we're not ready to be selling condominiums at this stage in the market.
Glenn, may I stop you there for 1 second?
Yes, you may.
Can you just please, for my benefit, honestly, and I don't know if others, the difference between fee simple and condominium and what that means to us, to the buyer, to you guys, et cetera?
Where do I start? Fee simple is a simple way of saying, much like a plat, where the applicant would subdivide the land, create platted lots, and then sell the lots. In a condominium, you would sell a unit. The parcel would not be subdivided into 12 pieces of land. It would be one piece of land with 12 units, and a buyer would then buy a unit which would have horizontal and vertical boundaries. It'd be a box on the land. There would be association involved with that. There's all sorts of insurance implications with that. There's all sorts of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac issues with purchasing of that. It's a very big issue with whether or not you're going to purchase a condominium versus fee simple townhomes. From the casual person walking down the sidewalk, they'd never know the difference. From the ARC, looking at the way it's going to look, I don't think there's any difference. It's merely in the way we're going to handle it on how it's going to get recorded with the county and what's actually going to be assessed. The value of each one of those units would be different, condo versus plat. So there's quite a few changes. Lucy?
And I would add just one thing that from the city's perspective, there's plats, and then there's multifamily projects, and a condo or a rental, we don't really review them any differently. Even when you establish the condominium, that isn't something that the city even looks at.
So if you don't mind, thank you for that. If you don't mind me asking this follow-up question, so then just as a consumer, I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better. As a consumer, let's say you were advising your mother or your brother or your son to buy, is there a benefit to buying one of these versus a condominium?
Well, that's going to depend. It's a pretty open-ended question. And what are the needs of your grandmother who's going to be buying that home? What's her? Wow, that's a kind of a tough question to answer, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that
really,
it's really that germane to this, but I'm very curious about it because I know we've had some other, in the past we've seen other iterations of this in one way or the other. But
there's a lot of different ways you could go with that. For example, there was a project up here somewhere, not in this area, but there was a project up in Issaquah Highlands where they were concerned, the developer was concerned with the resale, the ability to resale. For example, Division 2, Ravenna. There was a time there. That is a plat.
No.
No, that's a condo.
That's a condo.
There was an actual. They actually approached me to see what we could do to convert it from a condo to a plat because of all of the, or of a large majority of those owners were trying to refinance, and they couldn't do it because it was a condo. So there's there were a lot of implications with that. They never ended up doing it for a bunch of code reasons,
Isn't
actually.
there something on 12th Street too, where they're actually they're single-family detached homes that are on?
That's the one he's talking
Oh, that's the one you're
That's what
referring
I'm
to.
talking
Okay,
about.
right.
Yeah, it looks
So
like a plat.
That
Yeah.
and that's super unusual. I think that I can't speak to your grandmother. Well, I could speak to your grandmother, but not about that particularly. I think that there are advantages and disadvantages. There were a lot of liability lawsuits around condominiums, which is why we've gone fee simple lots have become very common. There are certain issues around how many lots have to be put up for sale, or how many condominiums have to be for sale and ready for sale at certain times.
It's a Fannie Mae issue on a
Exactly.
project for this one. It wouldn't be that much of an issue because there's only 12 lots. But for some high rises down in Seattle, for example, you'd have to put up 50% of them, or a certain percentage of them would have to be pre-sold before you could close on the first one.
Right, and that actually was an issue for Noland because
Yeah.
they were not finishing all of them as quickly as the ones that they were ready to sell.
I guess the reason I ask is because Vista Park has had some problems with
Ashford.
with some structural stuff. And, if you're building it and to the casual observer you walk by, it all looks the same. It's all being built at the same time. They're all attached. For all intents and purposes, it's one building with separated units as opposed to 12 different buildings, right? And I know residents who live in there who are having to foot a pretty hefty bill to fix, I don't know if it's related to, I think it's related to foundation and siding or something like that. The same thing could happen here. And so I guess I'm just wondering if you've got 12 different lots, but it's one building and it's all got the same construction and the foundation starts to go or the siding's bad or the roof is bad, how is that any different? And is everybody assessed the same amount of money? And, I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Well, again, too, remember, and this may or may not answer your question, but this is the same applicant that did Z-Home right next door. And Z-Home is a fee simple plat, although there's only 3 buildings for 10 lots, or 4 buildings for 10 lots. It's the same. You have the same issue
Yeah,
there.
it doesn't answer my question because I'm just curious, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't answer the question. I'm just curious if the implication to the buyer is the same as if it were, and I'm guessing that it's not, but I just find it interesting.
I can't really speak to the warranty issues that would come with that. That's outside of my area. I don't know, Tim, if you have anything to say to that.
Well, again, it's not terribly germane to this particular plat. I think it's important to understand this stuff as we're looking at these things going forward, but I don't know. I guess I'm thinking overall that just the community, when people ask me questions, I don't know how to answer them. You know?
Okay.
You know, Jeff, if I may add, I hear a lot of questions like that. I'm in a community where there's an inch separation, but looking from the outside, you can't see that. And there are implications for insurance and what you're liable for as far as damaged roof, whatever. And those are things that are unique in the sense that a lot of homeowners may not understand or be aware of. And so I hear that too. So I would agree that it's nice to get some clarification, even though it may not be our purview to really go into depth about it. But
Yeah, so maybe I could request, if we have some time in the future, to maybe just get a little bit of an understanding of something like that. More of a, maybe that's a workshop or something going forward. I don't know. Maybe
I'm not sure that we have anyone in the city that could, I mean, you know, it's because we,
No, I'm just kidding. All right,
I'm sure
we can
the
move
city
on.
attorney, if you paid him, would be glad
Yeah.
to come and talk about it.
All right, thank you for that.
I'll move on in that,
Yeah.
I like you said, that's a little bit of a side issue. The applicant has already decided, we've moved forward with this as a fee simple
Right.
project.
Right.
To try to, I'm going to touch on Lot 1 really quick for the benefit of Chantel. Again, this project was designed, our design for this was to mirror what was already approved previous. We didn't want to make any major changes. There were already 12 lots. While the lots themselves may be slightly different, our product is a little different than what Noland had before. The Lot 1 building over there was always pushed against Lot 1, and there was an overhang easement done that Jason had mentioned for the original piece. So if I heard your comment, why didn't we move it away to the east a little bit to expand the size of that? The answer is we were keeping in kind with what was already approved. And I do know that Z-Home, you've walked the site, Z-Home does sit a little bit further to the west and provide some breathing room, so to speak, for the pathway. But we kept in kind with what was already developed. They're already pretty tight, as you can see. We needed the extra space on Lot 12 to accommodate an easement and the plaza. And if we were to shift over, then we're making already narrow lots narrower, and that wasn't in the benefit of the project as a whole. Let's speak to that well
Lynn,
enough.
can I ask
Yes.
a question real quick? So you keep mentioning the Nolan plat. Was Core the civil on those plans or on
No.
that plat? Or no?
No, I was involved only on the condominium side, and we helped with the construction.
Okay.
But we did not do the original civil. I do not recall who did. I don't remember off the top of my head. So I have limited history with what Jim did. Moving forward, we did this project. To speak to the plaza, we'd actually, I'm not quite sure how to address this, essentially, but again, in kind with what was already proposed, we wanted to make this simple. We did the 12 lots. I believe at a subsequent to that was the plaza condition that we addressed and how it fits in with that. And while Jason was saying it is a small plaza, I can get to that one. Oops. There we go. It is a fairly small plaza that isn't really, I mean, I don't know if you're going to call it a recreation plaza. It's more of a focal point, more of a entryway to mirror what's going on the other side of the street as much as possible. It would not be, the applicant would not be opposed to actually tracting that out into a tract if there was a taker, so to speak. If the IHCA or an association was willing to accept responsibility of that, it makes more sense to us that parcel actually, this area here, which really has no benefit to that lot.
So
We would not be opposed to that, I should say, if that makes more sense.
Yeah, I guess the question to me is, so is the person buying Lot 12, since it's a fee simple lot, are they paying for that plaza?
They own it.
Right, so they own it, and they can make decisions on it or not make decisions on it?
If it was standing as it was right now, there would be an easement over that, and the city somebody else other than Lot 12 would be responsible for maintaining it, and there'd be restrictions on what they could do with it. And because of that, it makes more sense, at least in my mind, to tract that out and make it somebody else's.
Is it sufficient to say that that lot would be more expensive than the others because of that? I mean, I'm just trying to understand,
It's hard
again,
to
the
say.
implications
Now,
for
the
the
assessor,
resident.
that's a good question. The assessor would look at that and realize that there is a plaza on that. They would value that, but they would also value the fact that it's not for the sole purpose of Lot 12. It is for the public at large. So while they would be assessed on the value of the land, you could say that they would be deducted because that's not as technically theirs. It's a lot like a lot with a common driveway, like a panhandle lot. Yeah, they get taxed on it because they have their square footage, but that land isn't really benefiting them. It's benefiting others, so it wouldn't be taxed at the highest rate, so to speak. But to speak to you, yes, that's going to be theirs as it is right now. That plaza belongs to Lot 12. There would be an easement on it restricting them from doing certain things.
Would they have liability for that too?
The easement would limit their liability to that. You would want to indemnify them against anything unless they did something to it. It would, again, in my opinion, it would be better if it wasn't its own tract. It makes more sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Are you finished with your presentation? I think we have more questions.
I'm kind of
but-
winging this, so sure.
Okay. Well, I want to give you as much time as you need to present because we are peppering you with a bunch of questions. So, Scott,
Pepper away.
pepper away.
Pepper away.
How are we separating Lot 12 against that open easement there? Is there intent to have a fence, or what's the vision there?
It's the landscaping, and that's a seat wall right here.
Okay.
So
And then behind it
to speak
is-
to that, it would be visually separated by landscaping and improvements.
Okay. Accessible and walkable?
Yes. Right.
Only there. Okay. Great. Thank
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, Glenn. You just said a moment ago that this is more of a focal point than anything else, although I recall in some of the language in our documents tonight that a plaza is a gathering and a recreational space. And is there any way that we can combine this discussion about it being a separate tract and then maybe making it more implement that functionality?
Its functionality is that. I mean, there is a seat wall, and as a I mean, in as much as we could on such a small area on the corner to make it a gathering space. I mean, we have to speak to the fact that that's less than 10 feet square. How much gathering could actually happen there? We made it a focal point with the tree well and the landscaping, and put a little seat wall there so people could sit if they wanted to. It is a condition, but like I said, we didn't have a whole lot of space there to play with to make a full-on gathering space as an open space.
Can you tell me about the space that's on the east side of 12, the landscape space, and what that? Tell me a little more about that.
It's private landscaping for Lot 12. It would not be accessible to the public. That would be basically their side yard. The reason why there is a area there is because there's an easement over that. We were prevented from building
Nice.
that far east.
So right above that, so I'm reading power vaults. So
Those are further to the northeast.
Okay, and those are landscaped around.
Right, and those are existing.
Those are existing ones. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And in fact, if I would continue, it's a good segue, actually. Those power vaults were there when hard to say when those went in, actually. Vista Park. It's part of 10th, I believe. Those power vaults, specifically the one to the west, presented a challenge with this project, with positioning of Lot 12 and the driveway, and created kind of a unique situation there. And because of that, because of the criteria on how far away we needed to be from those power vaults with everything, that is what created that special circumstance with the parking on lot 12,
Okay.
without having, basically not deep enough to have parking on that driveway.
What was the easement that is on the landscaped part of Lot 12?
I believe it's a 5-foot power easement. My copy is small.
I'm going to guess it's a dry utility
There it is.
easement.
It is the 5-foot private dry utility easement.
Dry utility?
Dry utility.
Is that all the way down?
Yes.
Okay.
It runs the whole length.
I'm going to ask probably a loaded question here, but was there any, is there some magic to the number 12? Obviously, it's a 12th unit, 12th lot, but was there any thought put to 11 lots, maybe make them all a little bit bigger and then do something a little more substantial with that plaza area where 12 is? Because it seems to me that, it's buyer beware. It's going to be up to the buyer, but they're getting a reduced driveway apron. They're not going to be able to park there. They're going to be on that corner. They're going to have that easement. They're going to probably pay more taxes. It's a beautiful piece, and I love having that corner there, but I'm just curious if there was any thought to that and if that's completely out of the question.
Well, anytime you talk about reducing the lots on something that's already been taken care of, you're affecting the pro forma from what they purchased it for. So you're basically saying...
Right, but increasing the size of the other 11, does that make up for it or not?
It rarely ever does.
And the one thing I'll add, I don't know if this provides you with any comfort, but I believe that corner unit, which is in the same configuration, was the first one that sold on the other side of the street. It was
Is that right?
It was the most desirable one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm just curious if there was any thought to that. And I'm
But like I
suggesting
said,
you do it.
anytime for whatever figure you put for the sale of lot 12, you could not divide that by 11 and think you're going to get that much more for the other 11 units if you made them 1 foot wider or whatever.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that.
Okay. All right. Just thought I'd ask.
And I'll just back you up, Jeff, in that is what we're reviewing, the layout of the lots.
Right.
So for
Correct.
us to question 11 or 12 is perfectly within what we're reviewing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I asked. Right. Right. All right.
I don't,
yes,
I don't
go ahead.
remember any other questions off the top of my head that came from the commission.
Any other questions right now? No? I'm just trying to think.
Dimensions of the lots,
Yes?
just, could you, what are the?
What are they? You can't read them? Oh, boy.
Looks like the lots are 21 feet wide by
Traditionally, yes.
67 feet long, with the exception of lot 12, which is just shy of 33 feet wide.
That's correct.
Oh,
Thanks.
excuse me, lot 1 is actually 22 and a half feet wide.
And I'm sorry.
Just to follow up
Yeah.
on that, so I don't know what would define a skinny house, and Z-Home probably has a different definition, but 21 feet wide, and then what are the setbacks on these lots? So
Zero.
how wide?
0.
0? Okay.
They share walls, like
Well, yes. There'd be a
there's
gap.
There's a little gap
Yeah.
between them. Yeah. But we won't see that on the edges. Right. How tall are you? I know, again, not really in our purview, but just out of curiosity, how tall are these? How many stories? Three
Three
stories.
stories.
Okay.
And again, that's what is on the other side.
Right,
too.
right. I was just curious because I know that the allowable building height is significantly higher.
Ashford would be taller.
Yeah.
I
Or
believe.
even allowable would be
Allowable would be
85 feet, right?
right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
well below that.
And so, again, just for my own edification here, the parking garage, the garages will be at grade, and so you'd probably have some housing in the front and then above it as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
On that topic too, I did read in what I think was in Connections recently that something about rooftop gardens, and I know it's outside of our purview too, but I'm personally very interested in that. So were you planning rooftop gardens?
On this one, were we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a great asset to the community.
Great. Great question. Dinah?
When do we ask about sidewalk configuration, or do we? Is that in?
I think now.
No, okay.
I don't know.
So I guess it's a question for Lucy more than Glenn, though.
Okay.
The question pertains to the corner of High Street and 10th, and we have the same configuration of the, I can't remember what it's called, where the pedestrian access
Oh,
has-
the curb ramp.
the curb cut, yeah,
Yeah.
for the, is offset from the corner of the intersection, just like it is on the other side. And functionally, no one goes to that. The sidewalk is inset so far from the intersection that, yeah, correct, thank you, Glenn, for pointing that out, that the pedestrian walks down the sidewalk and does not take a right turn and then a left turn to get on the crosswalk. They just go straight across. And I've always wondered about that, and was concerned about definitions for pedestrian areas, safety liabilities, and things like that, and wondered if you could address that and why we're doing it again on the other side of the street. Some parts you have to because it mirrors the sidewalk, but
So those are all constructed.
Yeah.
So none of the improvements in the right-of-way are being changed as part of this. In terms of, I'm just looking, I think that probably what drove that is that north of High Street 10th is 2 lanes, and south, and it's bulbed out, you know, where the parallel parking would be, so it's very narrow. Whereas 10th Avenue South of High Street is 3 lanes, and therefore the crosswalk had to be pushed to the west to line up with the corner on the other side, because the 3 lanes is pushing it out of the way. Yeah.
That doesn't really address why the eastern side is a little bit off. I mean, the east side is really quite funky right now. Nobody walks up to the curb ramp and crosses, or I don't want to say nobody. Rarely do people do that. Yeah, they just cross at the corner where it would feel natural.
Yeah, I don't know why that one's, I mean, I'm looking at Google.
Yeah.
I don't know why that one's pushed so far to the east.
It's very odd, especially when cars come to the intersection, because they're naturally over the crosswalk. So, and this is going to be, well, this won't have, it will be the same issue probably.
Yeah, I mean, what I said, when you look at the aerial, it makes sense on the west side why that one got pushed out of the way. I don't know why the east side did.
Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if, total side note, I wonder if that can be, I don't know if that's going to be ever changed, but maybe looked at when they talk about the restriping and the configuration of 10th and High Street. Maybe somebody just look at that and potentially address it.
Well, if it was just striping, well, 2 things. The restriping of 10th and High only requires button removal, and that's much easier. The Durastripe that they use in the crosswalks has to be ground down. That's a huge and very expensive process.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be a small, it's not part of this permit. I mean, that
Right.
work, because it's just buttons. But then the curb ramp, relocating that's a
Yeah.
fairly big undertaking. So I think that if there was going to be rebuilding in this area, or, you know, there was some change, I would certainly wonder why we wouldn't want to push it up, because for the stop bar as well.
Yeah. So I guess I'd love to just have it end up on a list of things to look at some point, if that list exists. There, I've got a whole list myself. So
I would like to add to that list, because that's something I've been meaning to bring up to whoever in the city is a crosswalk.
I think I'm the
from-
designated receiver.
Yes.
a crosswalk from that alley, the Track B alley, to the movie theater. It's getting to be a lot of people crossing
Yeah.
halfway up that road there.
That's one last thing I
So
can
where
bring up
the-
later.
Are you talking about the alley between the theater and the parking that a lot of people are walking?
Right,
to?
that
Yeah.
would then now go between the Z homes and these homes.
Okay.
It's, everybody coming from north of there, most people, and I've seen quite a few people crossing halfway up that High Street over there.
Yep. Okay, Glenn, are there any other questions for Glenn on this particular plat right now? I know we've gone a little bit off tangent, but there's a reason for it, and if you've ever been to one of our meetings, you'll know it's because we care about the overall execution of this community, and every little piece adds to that overall community. And if we took every single one of them as an individual plat and said, yeah, this is good, then I think we'd be doing all of us a disservice. So thank you for indulging us. Any other questions for Glenn at this time? So at this point, I'd like to open up for public comment.
Great.
And I'd like to see if there's anybody here that would like to speak. Anybody from the public, sir? If you'd like to go ahead and put your name on the list, I appreciate that. And then, are both of you planning to speak? You're not, okay. If you wouldn't mind just putting your name, I'm going to have you stand up at the microphone because we're recording it. If you'll just give your name, your address into the microphone, that would be great. Limit your comments to just a few minutes, but speak your mind. Okay.
Oh, there's cookies over here? I didn't know that.
You can have a cookie.
Just kidding. Hi, my name is Bob Clements, and I'm a resident on High Street. I live in the Brighton Street condos. I'm the vice president of the Brighton Street Board. We welcome this project in our neighborhood. It's been a nice lot for our dogs to do their thing on, but I think some townhomes would be much nicer. We're directly east, is that correct? My sense of direction up there is really horrible. I don't have I-5 to line me up. So the corner unit, just like number 12, is constructed differently. And what we'd like to see is some cohesiveness brought to the entry by perhaps matching this area somehow over to the right. We also have probably the dry electrical storage right here that is an eyesore. Plus we have probably about a 15 by 15 space that was undeveloped by the former developer. So I'm just wondering if it's a possibility for the council to consider drawing something like that into the plan, similar to what the contractor here was asking for, and I believe our board would approve the releasing of that property as well. Of course, it'd need to be board approved, but.
Hang on one moment. I'm just pulling up the map.
And
of it.
additionally,
So-
what it might do is.
Are you asking that corner piece be split off? I mean,
I would need to present it to the board, and it would be voted on and approved. But we're in the process right now of trying to figure out what to do in addition to going through some construction repairs on the building as well.
okay.
But we've put off development of that just because we wanted to see what the outcome of our litigation was, and which has been settled. So we're in the process of doing some repair work on the building.
Okay. So it would not be possible to have this developer short platting that would be necessary?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That would have to be an action that your group would have to take or the property owner would have to take?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I think the rest of it will need to, in terms of the style of this one and whether it matches the one on the other side of the street, we'll talk about that during the break.
Yeah. Is it
Okay.
possible to get, do you have the internet, put Google Maps up
Yeah.
there so that the commission can see this? And then, and Mr. Clemens, if you wouldn't mind pointing out, I walk that almost every day, and I can't, and I'm looking at this, I'm not sure I'm understanding the 15 by 15.
Getting close, you'll
Yeah,
see what I'm talking about.
I've never really looked at it like that.
Is there any piece of your land that is owned by the city where there's an easement or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a dry electrical box just like the opposite corner of the of the property in discussion.
So that's adjacent or abuts the,
It's the opposite corner. It's the alley corner. Our electrical box is right on the sidewalk corner. I'll
And
show you.
it's closer to High Street or closer to your alleyway?
High Street.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because the box is up 10th on the left side.
If you
Okay,
move
so
the
you're,
mouse, then people you can see it.
Yeah, cool.
so which is the undeveloped area you're referring to?
Oops, what did I do? Oh, I went in too tight. Sorry. My finger hit that. Okay. So, where's the mouse? So, this is lot 12 that we're questioning, and this is the area where the contractor is talking about, creating some recreational area and a tree. And this is the Brighton Street condos. This area right here is just pavers. So it's
okay.
completely undeveloped by the developer, if you call, gravel and some cement pavers development. And then this is the box, and I don't know if that's a cable communication box, but it probably is, being that, you guys know what that would be? You see how tall that is?
I don't remember what that is.
Yeah.
Are we positive that there's nothing underneath those papers?
Yes.
So is
Yes, we are. That's good to know.
So is
I mean, I remember when we were haggling over that, and the pavers aren't there to allow access to something underneath.
so Lucy, couldn't you actually do some sort of modification to the easement or a BLA or something instead of a short plat to get that land?
You could do a BLA if there was another lot, but since actually, they're a condo,
Yeah, so
so
Not fee
Vote on it.
simple then.
it's not fee
Okay.
simple. So the only way to segregate that is a short plat. Now, since it's a condo, I'm not sure that segregating it makes sense. I don't entirely understand Bob's.
I guess what I'm saying is if there's a utility box there, there's some sort of easement, and couldn't you modify that easement if this property is adjacent to it, just
To
extend the
include it.
easement?
So the easement is for dry utilities, which doesn't really address like ownership and maintenance of a common element. Am I completely missing your point?
Yeah, no, I think you're getting it. I'm just wondering if, as Glenn says, you hand that piece over on 12th over to the city or whoever to be able to do the same thing on the other side. If there's an easement, be able to modify that easement such that the city would own that piece of property.
So an
not city.
easement
Without a
is
short
like
plat.
adding a coating on top.
Right.
You know that, I'm sorry.
So I have a question. When you say it's an easement and those are dry utilities, are those dry utilities for our building?
They probably are partly for your building and partly for things to the north. I don't know
You don't know?
exactly.
so Mr.
Because to relocate it would be ideal, because it doesn't work where it's at.
So let me ask you something, Mr. Clemens. If I recall, it's not sufficiently screened or landscaped around that box. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
One side has a bush about halfway
Yeah.
as tall, but otherwise it's completely exposed.
And so the responsibility of that landscaping to screen that would be whose?
Was the original property owner. The challenge was the way it went in and the side they needed to access really restricted how much screening could be put on it. We weren't very happy about it either, but it was in by the time.
Okay, so it's in now, but is there an option or some recourse or some avenue to, whose responsibility would it be today if somebody said, we really want that thing screened?
It would be the
condominium?
condominium.
Okay. So, I don't obviously have an answer. We don't have purview over that side. I appreciate the concern, and I appreciate the issue. And frankly, I share it with you,
Yeah.
but I don't live right there. I might recommend that, and this is probably way out of my bounds here, but might recommend that you get a meeting with these guys and see if there's something your organization can do in concert with what Ichijo is doing to see if maybe, I mean, this is a great example of what I was just talking about, where it's one set of properties, but it's directly across the street from another set, and I don't want to take it as just a single project, because it is part of the larger project. So maybe you could get a meeting with them and come to some sort of support agreement in some way. I don't know what the options are, but we can't help you, unfortunately, from this commission, but I understand the concern.
Okay,
So,
thanks for the information.
thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak tonight? What was the question on the sidewalk? Oh, yes. So you want to just understand which sidewalk we were talking about? Yeah, you can see just the stripe.
Change the view, and it'll be a little bit easier.
Looks like Lucy's used Google Maps before.
So this one is, I think, the one that's
Yes.
rather oddly positioned, special. I don't know what, I would have expected it to be more like here.
Yeah.
So I don't, but you can see here that this curb line lines up, but you can see because of the 3 lanes, how much further back this
Yeah.
one is, which is why this got pushed back
Yeah.
over to here.
That makes sense.
Which begins to
Yeah.
make, that's where that relationship is really, it's not great, but we didn't have a lot of ways to work around that.
Right. Okay. So thank you. I'm going to leave the public comment portion open for the moment, and then let's move to a short recess.
Sure.
Okay. So 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 20 minutes. What do you need?
Let's try 10 and see if we can get it
Okay.
done.
So it's 8:10 right now. We will attempt to come back at 8:20. Thank you. All right, welcome back from recess. I think we're going to start with staff response. Lucy, take it away.
Okay, so we're going to, we don't have a printout actually of the motion. So we're going to, when we're done discussing conditions, we will type that in so someone can read the whole motion. So I'm just going to read to you what our proposed edits and additions are to the conditions, and then once we've agreed, if we all agree, then we'll put them in. First of all, condition 13, we would add on the west side and add of lot 1, shall. And then on condition 14, similarly, the westernmost foundation, add of lot 1, adjacent. So addressing the point you brought up, Jeff. And then there's a new condition number 22 proposed, which would read, place the plaza at the southeast corner of lot 12 in a separate tract if the IHCA or similar organization will accept it for ownership and maintenance. Okay. And then the other piece I think that we wanted to address was, no, that's not what I meant to do. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So the other piece, it seemed like there was, oh, thank you. There was some interest in, the corner plaza as a facility, and is that sufficient, and how does that fit in with the requirements? So one piece I wanted to point out was in the guidelines for multifamily, it talks about best pocket parks should emphasize places of quiet activities or limited active recreation as appropriate and consistent with the uses in the neighborhood. And also that in the multifamily overlay, which is what this is from, is also, it says residents should have both private and public outdoor space. And so the applicant has committed that each unit will have both the roof deck and a back deck as two different private open spaces for each unit. There is this corner amenity, which is a common element, and that this block 10, like block 11A, is part of a larger Vista Park plat, and that the Vista Park plat provided park space that is within a few blocks. So it's here and it continues on to the backside here, which would be a larger recreation area. So that really, given the individual spaces that are associated with each unit and the fact that there are only 12 units in this, the corner element, while small, is in scale with those 12 units, and especially in light of the larger facilities that were provided within the plat. Relative to the topic related to that corner element that Mr. Clements brought up about sameness versus diversity, that we feel is really an ARC issue, and it's already come up in the applicant's discussions with the ARC, and they have identified that they actually do not want it the same. So, I mean, I think it's certainly a piece of feedback that we could pass on to the ARC in terms of if the commission concurred with Mr. Clements, we could pass that on. But the other than the neighborhood type in terms of being traditional townscape, whether it matches or not is really up up to the ARC to determine.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any further comment before we move on to questions? No? Okay. Okay, thanks. So I'll start. Thank you for that. I appreciate those changes. And also I appreciate the separate tract condition. I think that that's the right thing to do. The process for that, though, would that be you guys, the applicant, going to the IHCA and talking to them about that? Is that how that works?
Right. So you may not remember this, but a very common condition is that, they will identify during a preliminary plat that a tract goes to the IHCA.
Mhm.
And before we can dedicate something through a final plat to the IHCA, we have to receive a letter from them saying they will accept it.
Okay,
So it would be between now and final platting.
great. And similar condition to the other side, yeah. Okay. All right. As far as the sameness versus diversity, just my opinion, I'm not looking for everything to be the same, just complementary and not so vastly different that they look like two different places because we are in one place, even though I actually value the diversity. I like when we go from sort of block to block or neighborhood to neighborhood and get the different looks. I prefer complementary to same, if that means anything to anybody. And then on the in terms of the space, I actually don't have any issue with open space, park, et cetera, with this particular project, just because it is those 12 units. I like the idea that there are decks, even though they'll be over the alley, but that can be nice if it's done right. We can't really get into what it looks like in the front, but I'm hoping there's, a nice stoop or something in the front that makes it look nice and attractive and somebody feels good about stepping out their front door and sitting there, a porch. Okay, great. And then for me, I guess I still, I'm okay with the 12 lots. Just I kind of wish it was fewer, I guess, but that's just my personal opinion. All right. Any comments, Nina?
Make a comment. Yes, thank you, Jeff. I'm too glad that it satisfies my concerns to have the condition number 22 added that encourages at least the giving the tract to a party that could manage it. And Lucy, can you confirm for me, does that, because it's a tract, or I'm looking in the documentation for where it says it's actually a plaza, which in case it would then inherit that functional landscaping or construction, so that it doesn't turn into just a bunch of pavers on the concrete like across the street? Where do we get the assurances that it becomes a place to sit down?
So is your concern, Nina, that ensuring, because right now it does have a seat wall or something, so it has a seating component. Is your concern that it might change before construction or change in the future?
Yeah, I appreciate the design that it has right now, but again, we're not approving that.
Right.
But it is in our record that we're saying, hey, I approved
Yeah.
this because it has a seat wall and
Right,
the
right.
tract. But if it said that this tract is a plaza, or
I see.
you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
what-
So then it
the
would
use-
inherit,
the use.
and so that in the
Yeah.
future, as this does get built, there's an enforceable definition that says it does have to have a place to sit, for instance.
Okay.
So in other words, if I could make sure I understand this, in other words, if it does get handed over to the IHCA, that they don't completely change the use and just make it a pavered,
Right.
paved sidewalk or something.
Yeah, whoever
Right.
wants to maintain it wants to
Yeah.
keep.
So I will, in a minute, when I have a moment to think, I will write a sentence to add to that condition that the uses of the tract will include a plaza with seating opportunities or something.
I guess we
along
want to avoid what happened to the other side with the
Right.
pavers.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And I
I'll
think-
tell you what happened with the other side, which was, that was a long time ago, and we were, we learn. There was a requirement for some kind of passive recreation, and by the time Nolan got around to not passive recreation, but some kind of open, common element. I'll say it, that's a little better, since I see all the eyebrows going up. They did not do much until the very end when I think they were already in financial straits. And so it was, I think we went back and forth for 6 or 8 months, and we just could not get them to put in anything that had seating in it. So the best we could do was getting the plaza so that if someone, I mean, that paver area, so that if someone wanted to add a bench, there was at least a place to put it. But we agree, we just thought that was not such a big deal that it wouldn't or couldn't be there. So, I mean, I think adding the language is to be clear.
Yeah.
What the expectation is.
Agreed. Thank you. Anybody else? Jim?
Thank you. The one thing I would say is I actually don't have a problem with the number of lots, you know, in the sense that, to me, I wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between 14 condo units in there and 6. And I mean, it just kind of all looks like one big condo unit. So I might be different in that, but I don't mind the 12 lots. I am, however, I'm going back to something that Nina said with regards to that, the tract that's going to be dedicated to IHCA and calling it a plaza. 10 by 10, I don't know how you can have a 10 by 10 space that you know, incorporates what a plaza is and a social gathering place. And to me, the inclusion of perhaps a similar sized area in the adjacent condos just makes sense. And it's a way to maybe extend it and truly make it, although it's across the street, but truly make it a plaza, you know, a gathering spot, you know, by having the two somewhat together. So if there's any way to, you know, encourage that, perhaps talking to that other association, see if there's maybe an easement that could be created that gives control to IHCA. And I'm not sure about, you know, you can make it look different, but still have the two working together to create that social gathering space. So I don't know how you do that, but I guess that's what I would suggest.
So the challenge is that through this process, we cannot require him to do something on someone else's property. I think you've done an excellent job of communicating your goal to him. I'm not sure if you're asking for something beyond that opportunity to communicate that.
No, I'm not asking for anything really. I'm just more or less talking to Z-Home and suggesting it.
Okay.
Thanks.
If I could just clarify, so I don't have a problem with the 12 lots. I just thought it would be nice if there was more space for that plaza. So if it could be fewer lots, that's great. But I'm not suggesting that 12 isn't the right number. I just yeah. I mean, to make real. I mean, it's really consistent with you guys. What you guys are saying is to really make use of that space, because I do think it is an entry point when you go from commercial area to residential area. And unfortunately, you know, Vista Park right now is not the most, forgive me, the most attractive, you know, set of buildings in terms of relative to other parts of the Highlands. It's fine. It's not ugly. It's just not. Sorry, Ashford. Yeah, it's not. You know, it's big block buildings, right? So it'd be nice to have a little bit more there. I think I'm more concerned about, you know, the screening of the utility boxes and that sort of thing, because I think you spend all this time and money on making this entry nice, making these units nice, and then you get this big ugly green and beige boxes that sort of, you know, lock it up there. So anyway, so I just want to clarify that. Anybody else? Scott?
Yeah, so my closing comments would be happy to hear that there's intent around adjustment to the striping on Northeast High Street. I think that that's going to be very beneficial in light of current traffic volumes, as well as beneficial from the perspective of parallel parking in front of those units. So key, very much appreciated there. I have a few reservations in regards to what we're calling the plaza space, and my reservation is not that the plaza space is there, but how in the front room it is for unit number 12, at least on 2D, right? So I think it would be beneficial if there was some sort of visual representation as to what this plaza would look like at ground level, so we would have an understanding. I think that might add some more context and depth for our understanding. But I like and I appreciate the vegetation and green space, if you will, along that space. I would just be concerned for, and again, it's buyer decision, right? However, for unit number 12, that seating area is literally, again, on paper in that person's front room. So, food for thought.
If it is like, and maybe the applicant can speak to this, if it is like 11A, there's a kind of big staircase that goes up, and so their living space is essentially almost a whole floor above the plaza level. So it's not like someone sitting in the plaza is looking right into their dining room. However, takes all kinds. Some people like to have the public looking into their dining room. And I think the important thing, one of the nice things, if it is possible for it to be in a tract, that does draw attention to the fact that there's something else happening at that corner, so that a buyer, if it wasn't complete, I'm not sure exactly what the completion requirement is, but I think it's 50%. So if that buyer would know that there was something happening on that corner that they weren't in control of.
Right, right. And I would just anticipate a lot of activity, obviously, in light of all the businesses that are now coming into play, as well as the movie theater, and that being a key cross point, gathering location for individuals as they're coming to meet up for movie and so forth. So.
Yep. Thank you. Chantal?
So I don't have anything specific about the plat. Most of my comments, I think, like most of the ones before, will be more about the future, and I understand why bringing back that corridor again, the tract B. So it's the design is to have it all the way to a lot line, but then at least try to think about ways to maybe have some trellis on the walls or some vegetation growing on it, so it's not just okay. And let's see, it's another point related to
Chantal,
that.
can I just add one thing? I was thinking a little bit more about that. There is no setback required, so the a builder could choose if it was there's no setback required. So, but part of the reason why there was the overhang that Jason mentioned was to make it a more interesting wall, so that it wasn't just a big blank wall, but that there would be more play in the wall.
On that
side,
west side as well.
on that
okay.
on the east side of that tract.
Right.
On the west side of the development, on the east side of the tract, yes.
Right. So, so right along on this part. So, the idea, that's why that overhang easement was allowed, was so that it wouldn't just be a big blank wall, and it would be more interesting, along with, doing something like a trellis. And there is a little bit of landscape that is within the tract. The paving doesn't actually go all the way up to the property line, so there is some of that landscape that's there will be there in the future.
Okay. And so the other thing would be we've talked about integration with the other townhouses on the east side of it, but I don't know how that could be possible, but to integrate with the Z homes too, which are very architecturally very different from the ones on the other side. So this could be somewhat of a link between the two, and not just having those two blocks the same and then the Z homes being so completely different right after that. Right.
Similar species of landscaping and drought tolerance. Sorry, you don't have a microphone, so I'm repeating what you said. So, do you want to go to the microphone and share that with us?
Jeff understood what you said. He was repeating it, so it was on the record.
Yeah. So if you want to add further to that, you can go to the microphone. Otherwise, okay, we're good.
I'm afraid that covers it.
Thank you, Chantal.
Thank you.
Eric, Tim?
I'm seeing in the plans that it appears that all of these units are going to have ADUs. Is that correct? Is that the way it is planned to be now, or is that just shown there as being a possibility?
So none of the units so far as the applicants informed us envision ADUs. There is a condition which was put on the ASDP which talked about the convertible accessory units for, say, home occupation type things, because that's certainly a possibility. They were envisioned with a separate, if you will, ground floor entrance versus to the low level and a main floor entrance.
So similar to the brownstones that we
Similar
were
to the
looking at,
brownstones,
where they are set up where that ground, the lowest floor could be separate businesses, but they're attached inside and could just
Right.
be another bedroom
Because there's two, it implies that there's two street-level entries.
and that's why.
Yeah.
But it's not, we have not heard anything about any of those being used as ADUs.
And I'm wondering about the easement on Lot 12. We talked about, there was discussion about it was owner-maintained vegetation, and I'm wondering what it is that, where is that going to be? There's a seating wall there, and I'm wondering if that wall extends all the way around at that height down the sidewalk. It tapers down to ground level. Okay. And I'm wondering what it is that the owner of that lot is going to be able to do in terms of fencing. You say it's not accessible to the public, but it's right there on the sidewalk, so.
If you could please answer that at the microphone, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Because I don't know where the easement stops. I know where the plaza is as far as the seating area goes, but I don't know as that jagged edge goes all the way back to the utility vaults.
So the key thing to remember is that, as was discussed earlier, that the elevation here, the floor level is up 2 flights, not 2 flights, but 2 stair sections above this plaza area. So you go up a step to this level and up a step to the front entry. So it's not at all like they're sitting in the front door. But this raised planter, which is about half the height of the stairway, curves around, and then as this goes here, it dives into the rising elevation of the street. So this landscaping here function is primarily, part of it's an easement, but it's also to have that wall back off of the sidewalk in the street. So your question originally about end units, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. Some people want a yard, some people want no yard. Mm-hmm. Some people want an end unit, some people don't want an end unit because they have 2 streets instead of 1. Right. Some people want an end unit because they only have 1 neighbor. So
then the landscaping on that east side, the easement is where we see all that landscaping right now, right? The 5 feet?
It's 5 feet,
right?
right?
And so on the east side of the landscaping, there would be no fence, correct?
it's just sidewalk.
Just sidewalk, right?
Yeah, and then this planter wall.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, I guess.
But that's maintained by the homeowner.
That's homeowner maintained, and part of the problem is if they decide not to maintain it, kind of detracts from somewhat of the,
They'll be required to.
well,
Yeah.
they can,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite, if there are anybody from the public who'd like to speak. Last chance. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion at 8:48. And anything else from you, Lucy?
I'll just start typing unless
Okay.
there's anything else.
No, I have some other things outside of this, but I would like you to be part of that conversation. So you
Is
want
it
to take,
for the plat?
it's not related
Okay. So why don't we
specifically to
just,
this.
can I
3
just
minutes?
type real quickly?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, another quick recess. All right. Thanks to Mavis Beacon. Lucy's got us something to read.
So it's our standard motion with the introductory paragraph and the closing paragraph, and in between are the edits to condition 13 and 14, and then a new condition 22, which I've read to you, except I added a second sentence which it reads, "The uses of the track shall include plaza and seating opportunities to ensure they are present going forward."
Everybody okay with that? Okay. Is there anybody that would like to read the motion? Chantal?
I move that the Urban Village Development Commission recommends approval to the City Council of the Issaquah Highlands Vista Park Block 10A preliminary plat file number PP 130002 as described and evaluated in the staff report dated July 10, 2013, and plat drawing dated April 23, 2013. Do I have to read all of it?
Yeah.
Okay. And subject to the condition as identified in the staff report and as amended tonight. Condition 13, adding lot 1. Condition 14, adding lot 1. New condition number 22, place the plaza at the southeast corner of lot 12 in a separate tract if the IHCA or similar organization will accept it for ownership and maintenance. The use of the tract shall include plaza and seating opportunities to ensure that they are present going forward. And I move that the Urban Village Development Commission direct the Development Services Department to prepare findings of fact and conclusions for review and approval by the UVDC chairman, affirming the UVDC's decision to move the Issaquah Highlands Vista Park Block 10A preliminary plate, file number PP 130002, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report of July 10, 2013.
Thank you, Chantal. We have a motion. Do we have?
second the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Can you just read that last phrase that I added, "and as amended tonight"?
And as amended tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Let it show that 4 regular members of the commission have voted unanimously for this. No no's. No yes. So we move forward. Thank you. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you to staff. At this time, I'd like to move on to open discussion, new business. Does anybody have anything? I have a handful of things, small handful of things. Anybody? No? Okay. I'd like to bring up just a couple of things. We don't have to go necessarily into great discussion about them, but I don't know if we have opportunity to do anything about it, but I've been spending a lot of time out in front of the movie theater watching traffic, both pedestrian and automobile traffic, looking at parking. It's absolutely clear to me that the parking garage is being well used and is full most of the time when there's a lot of activity, obviously, at the theater, but more so not more disturbing. Disturbing to me is the lot directly south of it is pretty much full during peak times for movies when the construction isn't complete and there are no businesses in there. I'm very worried about what's going to happen when businesses actually go in there.
Is this the one that Federal curves
Yes.
around? Okay.
Yes. So I don't know what the opportunities are, but one thing that would be really helpful would be wayfinding. I don't see any wayfinding. I don't know if it's just that we're not there yet, but very specific, signs that state where you can park for the theater. In other words, directing them to the garage first, I think. But I'm just worried about what's going to happen there. Now, I know that the park and ride, I don't think it's supposed to be an official parking area for the movie theater, but if in fact it can be used for the movie theater, whatever language is appropriate, it would be nice if if that could be pointed out via some signage, wayfinding, something that states additional theater parking after hours or after 5 p.m. or whatever the language could be.
So let me take a step back because I have a question. So Block 3 is that one that I think you're talking about.
Between Federal and Park?
Right.
Yep.
And is your concern that, so first I'll just say that I think that until the whole project is done and we see how it settles out, it's hard to say how people will use the parking. And second of all, there are, except for maybe the block with Marshalls and Dick's, I think almost every block has cross parking agreements, because the idea is that park once idea that you know, you might be coming for dinner, or you might have gone to Safeway, and you should just
Right.
be able to walk back and forth and not feel like you have to move your car. So that said, are you concerned that someone may show up for Block 3 for one of the use, Mad Pizza or something that's
Mod,
going to be?
yeah.
Is
Mod.
It, is it Mod?
Mhm.
Okay. I like Mad.
There is a Mad Pizza, but that's a Starfire.
That someone would show up and there wouldn't be a place to park is
Yes, so my observation is that block 3 is pretty full during peak times, as is the parking lot for the Ram, with the Ram not even being open yet. And, you know, I'm concerned for Sorella, I'm concerned for Zoomies, I'm concerned for all of those, because now we're talking about the very limited street parking. And I know parking's always, I mean, we've always been concerned about parking being an issue. I don't know that we can eliminate it completely, but anything we can do to encourage behavior, and again, I agree that it might be better to do it once it's all built out, but we need to recognize the patterns now so we can prepare for that. And when I say we, I don't know who we're talking about, if it's Regency or somebody else, but I'm afraid that someone's going to say, you know, it is what it is, we just let it go without doing something about it, and I don't know who has the authority. Which brings me to motorcycle parking. And there's not a single motorcycle parking spot in any of those lots, anywhere. And I observed when I walked past the theater the other day, and I have a picture of this I've been meaning to send you, I'll just show it to you tonight. 3 motorcycles are parked in the void space between the parking and the walkway, which is between the parking garage and the theater. So they're parked in that white striped area, which is really pedestrian access.
yeah.
For a very good reason. Not one of those bikes was mine, but it could have been. And the alternative is you're parking in a very limited availability automobile parking space and ticking off your fellow drivers. So I don't know what we need to do, but I think we need to highly require parking spaces for motorcycles and scooters throughout the project, even if it's one space per lot that's split into 2 or 3 different motorcycle parking spots. Because, Tim, I don't know if you would agree with this as being a rider. You are a rider, correct? It's not that hard to take. I mean, I'm talking about taking away parking spots, which sucks, but there are a lot of bikers that are out there, and scooters. At least on our street, there's 3 scooters that would be more beneficial to. Anyway. Yeah, we did. And I thought there was a requirement, so that's not happening. And I don't know what happened to the requirement.
So I think maybe there are a couple things getting confused. In the Lakeside Development Agreement, and therefore in the Swedish Development Agreement, there is a requirement for motorcycle parking.
Rowley too, right?
I
think we got to it at Rowley.
I'm not sure that it's required there.
For the movie theater. I mean, yeah, I did too.
So we have no way of requiring it at Issaquah Highlands. It's not in the code. We put it in as a consideration in every single, we ask people to consider putting it in. We look for opportunities. The only motorcycle parking that exists is on 10th Avenue, where there is angled parking.
I know where it is. It's useless space for when it comes to. It's fine. It's great if you live in that area, but it's useless when it comes to the.
It's the best I can give you. I know it's not much. So, you know, I mean, I can certainly pass the comment along. I guess the other question would be if you wanted to talk to Regency about it. I mean, I have no way to make them do it. I completely understand what you're saying. It's why we always put it in as a consideration. We just have no basis for requirement.
Well, I guess my biggest concern is not so much. I mean, motorcycle parking is a parking is a piece of it, but there are other things. I love the idea that it's park once and go everywhere, but, you know, there are unique situations. You said that Dick's is not one of those, Dick's and Marshall's.
Well,
That troubles me, because those are going to be the bigger lots.
There would, it's only for the cinema that it says that. Otherwise, it is cross easement parking. I don't understand. There is shared parking between all the blocks. It's just not for the cinema. They wanted, and I think it would not be enforced. How would you even know?
Well, I don't know, but it leads me to the next concern, and that is it's Safeway. So some people have brought up to me, look, I love the idea of shared parking, but if you need to go and grocery shop and pick up your groceries, if you're forced to park at the Ram or in the parking garage and walk over there and carry your non-plastic bags over to that parking garage, that could be an issue. So I'm wondering if Safeway is going to consider, or maybe should consider, and I'm just using this as a forum because I can't seem to get another forum, consider, you know, shopping specific spots, maybe not all of them, but just say these 2 rows if you're shopping at Safeway today. I'm not a big fan of, you know, these 2 spots are for the dry cleaner and these 2 spots for the teriyaki place. That bugs me. But grocery store is a little bit different, I think, in that scenario.
I do think that there is some difference, and I'm not sure the extent to which they participated in the shared parking agreement now that I'm thinking about it. But most of that is pretty subtle. I mean, it does, you know, I don't know that they're going to put up signs, parking here for only while you're shopping at Safeway.
Anyway, the larger I'm not expecting to solve it here. I guess the larger concern is that I would love for us to somehow have a forum, considering this was our purview, and I think still is, because I'm not, until this entire community is complete, I've threatened that I'm going to continue to be on this commission, and I call it a threat because I'm sure you don't all want me here. But I think, you know, I don't want to wait till it's all done and say, well, look at all the problems we had. Next time we do this, we'll fix them, as opposed to saying, okay, we're addressing this now because we're seeing it happen, and let's be proactive about it. And I'd love for a forum to be able to do that, because a lot of people are coming to me, a lot of residents are coming to me, knowing I'm on this commission, saying, hey, what are you guys doing about this? What's happening with that? And I don't have the answers, and
So
I'd
you
like
can
to
always
address it.
send them to me, and you can always,
Can I request a meeting between you and, with you and Regency? Will that help? Can I do that, you know, sort of outside of this body here, just to share my concern?
right? I mean, I don't think I can force them to show up, but I can ask that they do.
Oh, I think you can. All right. Anyway, do you guys, on that topic, any other, you know, consent or
Just to
dissent? Or
not leave you hanging out there, the thing I had noticed, and I think you had too, not just the parking, but the pedestrian behavior on Park between the parking lots feeding the cinema. It's really great to have all this pedestrian activity until it's in the middle of Park Drive, which is such a thoroughfare with many lanes. So it's worth revisiting for safety issues for pedestrians.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, I'm not quite following. Can you describe what you're witnessing?
Because the parking garage works so well and people park everywhere else, the pedestrians don't necessarily use the crosswalk to get over to, because it looks like
So
a big
lot
fat
3.
plaza. It looks
Yeah.
like it's pedestrian oriented, for crying out loud, and it is.
So they're all
And it
parking
should
in
be.
lot, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it should be, but
Yeah.
but then again, there might be some assistance that we can provide them to make distinctions between them and the cars on such a busy street as Park. That one in particular.
Yeah, from
North
lot
and
3
Beach.
to the parking, to the theater is a major now pedestrian thoroughfare, even though there is sufficient, in my opinion, crosswalks at the edge of both of the blocks. People just don't use them, so maybe it's an enforcement issue or it's a tragedy waiting to happen. But which leads me then, I'm sorry, does anyone else want to add to that? Because it leads me to additional points associated with it. Jim?
Just one thing, because Lucy, you mentioned there's nothing we can really do with getting to the motorcycle parking. I don't ride, but I still think it's important to have parking, because on the other side of it, people who drive the bigger vehicles, you know, just like you said, they don't like to see motorcycles taking up a full slot or something. Anyway, Lucy, you mentioned that it's not in the code. Was there anything said in the CIP about motorcycle parking? Because, I mean, we did talk a lot about it, in particular in Raleigh. I think we talked about motorcycles, bikes, and even smart cars, I think. And then we did also talk about it in the retail up at the Highlands. So it may not be part of code, but if it's part of the Central Issaquah plan, and we're trying to kind of impose the Central Issaquah plan all over Issaquah, then it is part of our privy. I mean, does that purview or, yeah, whatever. I'm getting tired.
Unfortunately, the development agreement's really clear that we can't impose new standards that are adopted afterwards, even smart ones, unless the developer agrees. Now, I think that, I think probably Jeff's question, you know, about talking with Regency, you know, that may be a better avenue than trying to, you know, force them. And because if they wanted to use the new standards, we could make that happen. If they don't want to use the new standards, I can't force them to do it. So probably the best place to start is let's talk about what might be an opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I think maybe showing them what we've done with the new standards for motorcycle parking and maybe some other things would be great, and say, hey, this is what we're doing elsewhere. We'd love for that to happen here. And you said something earlier which hopefully will help me in that is, oh, if it's just restriping, it's not that big a deal, really. You didn't say it in those exact words, but we're just talking about restriping, right?
Right.
So it isn't, in my opinion, that big a deal. And the alternative is what I will show you in the picture are three bikes on the second week of the theater being open, parking in an area which is clearly abating the access between the parking garage and the and that's not safe for the pedestrians.
That's the ADA route, so that is a big deal.
It's not good.
And my guess is, and just so you can think about it, because you're a clever thinking kind of guy, the challenge is probably going to be Regal has crazy requirements for parking, and I'm going to guess that what Regency is going to say is we are bound by having X number of stalls in each of these places, and therefore we cannot reduce those number of stalls by subdividing them for motorcycles as much sense as it makes.
Yeah, and I'm actually okay with that if there's a larger, thoughtful plan for motorcycle parking. If you think of downtown Kirkland, for example, there are places on, I can't remember the name of the street, Lake Washington Boulevard or whatever that street is in front of, before you get to Market. There are a handful of places where there are 2 or 3 motorcycle spots in the parallel, and if we took a parallel parking area or a couple of those throughout the area, that would be fine. I think there are a lot of solutions. I don't think it has to be in the garage per se. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to be prescriptive about it. And it's not just a me issue. Yes, it helps me and affects me personally, but it would be as if I was a bike rider and was concerned about bike lanes or bike parking. So, which then leads me then to similar situation. We talked about High Street and 10th and restriping those. One of the areas that has come up quite a lot is we have a lot of new people driving in the Highlands because of the movie theater. Mm-hmm. And Park Drive, as you go down toward 9th, Highlands and 9th, you've got the 3 lanes and 2 left turn arrow there, right? Do you know what I'm talking about at 9th and Highland? 9th and Park. And no one knows what that third right lane is for, even though it's fairly clear, but not entirely. It either needs to be striped or blocked or turned into 3 turn lane. Yeah. Something needs to happen there because.
You know what it's for?
Do you know what I'm talking about, Doug?
Yes, we all know about it.
Okay.
But it needs help.
It needs serious help immediately because we're creating behaviors that are not sustainable and dangerous.
Yeah, that actually, I believe, is a through lane to the undeveloped parcel across the street.
The Microsoft never to be developed parcel. So something has to happen on that right lane.
Yeah, and there's I believe that there's an overhead sign on that.
Doesn't help.
Doesn't help, okay.
I'm talking about behaviors, not.
Okay.
So, so I'm sorry about this, but this is really important to me. I had a Seattle police officer who lives in the neighborhood bend my ear dramatically about what's going on there, and he was doing it as a resident, not a police officer, but he knows his stuff. Yes, there's a sign above that says straight only, but there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And then, but here's what I want to say is, if it's possible to stripe those turns, I'd like to throw that out there, because the lane sweeping is an issue, and the 2 to 3 lanes is also an issue too. So I would love to have these conversations offline with whoever is appropriate, and then that leads to the final piece for me, I think, is the enforcement, right? So the enforcement of the no turn on red, the enforcement of the parking, and that sort of thing in that whole area, because again, behaviors are being set right now by people who either live there or are new to the community, and the enforcement isn't happening.
Right.
So I'd like to invite the chief of police or the head of traffic, Dan, whoever makes decisions with the city, whatever. I'd love to do a drive around and just sort of talk about the stuff we're seeing and see what can be done.
And one thing I'd suggest too, you said a lot of people would come to you and say, what are you doing about this? There is a process, you may be familiar with it, it's a citizens action request that then comes into the department and gets routed to the appropriate people to resolve those issues. And the concern that was raised regarding 10th and High, the solution and resolution to that is as a direct result of what we call the CAR process.
That's great.
So that would be something you could share
Yeah,
with those who...
I actually have shared that, and that's great. I appreciate that. That's great that there's a process. I just think we have a responsibility, considering that we helped create.
But it documents the concerns. It's really the proper vehicle. Once the facility is constructed and built, and then is in the hands, this would be public right-of-way, for example, it's in the hands of the city to get that information to the appropriate people and have it documented. Because sometimes we see trends, and the first one may come in, we'll take it under consideration, and then you start to see a trend, and then the city will take
Jeff,
action.
I know up in Taos, police officers patrol, of the stop signs occasionally. So they've obviously received complaints, and so they've responded to that. So I don't know.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank
Yes.
you for paying such a...
In the pedestrian-oriented community.
Yes.
So, Jeff, I appreciate you calling these out because I share the same concerns. Heavy overflow parking taking place down across from the theater, duly noted. And I've brought this up before as well, but since we're on the topic of concerns, right? Eastbound traffic on just east of 10th Northeast High Street, parking on both sides of the road off of Northeast High to the east of 10th becomes a one-lane road during busy hours now.
And
highly congested area with all the traffic.
And largely because the parking lot is completely full with the restaurants and Bar
Correct.
3 and others. So it's a compounding problem, and it's just simply getting worse.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen anything yet.
Right. So Lucy, appreciate you raising these up. If that could be added to the list, I've on more than one occasion been stuck in that mess.
So I guess my question is relating to that process. Can we, or should we even, as a body, express our concerns through that process or some other process to say, as a commission, we oversee this stuff. We've seen where it is. People come to us because we're perceived as perhaps leaders or at least people in the know. As a body, if we're willing, can we go and say, because I don't want to wait for somebody else to say the same thing I'm saying as an individual, because most people they either complain to me or their neighbors or their spouse or whatever, or they just do nothing because they figure nothing will happen.
Yeah, and
I think that you can
your microphone.
So you could choose to write a letter as all or part of the commission. You could choose to ask to have a meeting. Okay. Is that
Oh, very good.
okay? That's too much. So you could write a letter. You could have a meeting. I think the distinction is that I don't know that you're in a position to require someone to show up here.
Understood.
But I certainly think as a group that takes you clearly have a lot of passion and commitment and care for the community and the decisions you've made and the things you've learned and the things you've observed. I think that you can absolutely, as a body, communicate those concerns based on the knowledge that you have, and that I imagine would, by most people be received differently than just individuals writing a letter. So.
Great. Okay. And then the last question I have is really just more curiosity, because we're getting down to the point where there are very, very few pieces of land left to develop. And a couple of people have asked me, including my wife and frankly myself, what is happening between Falls Drive and Park Drive east of 10th and west of the pond? What is
Okay.
that?
I'm too tired. I have to pull up the map.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's not wooded. It's just, flats.
Oh, here?
Yes, between the pond and 10th.
Yeah. So that is lyrically named Block 19. And that was bought by Bennett Homes. They submitted an ASDP for, it was a lot of units. It's like 124 or 167 or something. It was a combination, it was stacked flats in 2 buildings. Bennett Homes had partnered with a company, I think out of Japan, called Sumitomo. And I'm sorry. Okay. I think it was a partnership, and then it wasn't a partnership. And so Sumitomo has that land. They have renewed that ASDP every year. They have talked to me about the possibility of doing a new one. And this will become more pressing by 2017 when the development agreement expires, because we don't know exactly what properties that haven't been built on will be left with. I mean, that's something we're talking about with Port Blakely. I mean, it's not like, the fees, the infrastructure and everything's been built for them, but at some point, the development agreement won't extend forever. And so the question is what happens then, and maybe that will encourage them to move forward on that.
Well, unless it just expires and they can do whatever they want, which.
Oh, yeah. Like the city's going to just
Well,
make
I'm
it
just
the Wild
just
West.
saying, it'd be great to have an answer to that before we get there, which I know you're working on. So, okay, well that's helpful. Thank you. I had no recollection whatsoever.
Well, I mean, because you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
so that's understandable. I mean, really, the Marriott site, Block 19, and Microsoft. They're really the only ones that aren't in play right now.
So the Marriott site, you call it the Marriott site because Marriott owns that land right now?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's nothing moving on that one at this point?
There's a for sale sign up now. We extended, and their permits have expired.
And could that turn into residential?
So that's an interesting question, because you ask interesting questions. The sign says commercial or multifamily, but they actually do not have multifamily entitlement.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking that question.
So, and I pointed that out. Keith has a staff member named Andrea Lenner, who reaches out to a lot of people in the community. And I said, if you call that real estate person, please let them know that the city does not consider them having multifamily entitlement.
Yeah.
Now, doesn't mean at some point in the future we might not talk about under what circumstances we would consider what. But what they own right now is X number of square feet of commercial.
Commercial, yeah, okay. All right, so I'm sorry to keep everybody late. These are things that have been burning in my head, and with all these people walking around now, lots of questions going on, and my goal is obviously just to help make this the best possible, and not just for me, for all these other people. Okay, anything else? Oh, yes, we do have one, we have one. No, a statement from Nina regarding her role here and her job.
And today I just address the commission and the staff with general information as it has come up in my awareness, and I appreciate your assistance as I go forward. I got a new job last fall in Issaquah Highlands at the Highlands Council, which is the nonprofit organization charged with building community in Issaquah Highlands, and I love my job. I'm an editor and publisher, contributor to Connections newspaper, which we have visual aids of here. There's a website, e-letter, other media that I use to build community in Issaquah Highlands. That's our only mission, is to build community in Issaquah Highlands. However, because we have applicants who come before us who I may sometimes have dealings with, I sell advertising, and an applicant may be a potential advertiser in the future. People who own land in Issaquah Highlands that are in the covenant for community, which is what defines membership loosely, that word loosely used, those people pay community enhancement fees to fund the activities of Issaquah Highlands. Highlands Council. So in that, I don't know if there would be any conflict of interest. I believe I have an interest in my community just because I live there, and I have a vested interest in owning it because I own a home there. But as applications come up, I'd like to be able to describe to you any possible relationship or interaction that I might have had with an applicant and let you decide whether, and I could also share with you any feelings I might have for my ability to be unbiased with an application, and have you help me decide that. And if there is a necessary, if there's time that I need to recuse myself from deliberations or from maybe participating in deliberations and not being part of a decision, whatever, I'll leave it to your hands. My term goes to 2015. I'm looking forward to filling that out, and I hope that there'll be a balance. Just wanted to be open and upfront with all of you.
Thank you, Nina. So she and I had a conversation about this and thought it was appropriate to bring it up just so everybody knew. My feeling is that most of the stuff that would come to Connections would be public information anyway, as if it were in the Issaquah Press or something. So, obviously Nina will let us know if something, if there was some other sort of expose or something else that, but it's unlikely that would happen. So just wanted to put that out in front of everybody.
I'll think about whether we should ask the city attorney just so we have a ruling, because I don't want you worrying about it. No, but I appreciate you thinking about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I do tend to think the way Jeff does, that this is, you're dealing with what's public information, and anybody else in Issaquah Highlands who's sitting on the commission is hearing, it could read the article and be in the same boat. So I'm not sure that it changes anything, but it's a good one to think about. And the other thing that you said that made me think about it is, I think that the consolidation of commissions is going back to the council this fall. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll find out where their thinking is.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 6th. We look forward to seeing everybody there. Thanks. We close the meeting at 9:26 tonight. Thank you very much.